Hey guys, I'm Meg. I'm a heroin addict.
Hey, Meg.
It's really good to be here. So I always start off by saying I have a sponsor who has a sponsor, and I've worked the steps, and I continue to work the steps. I take other women through the steps. I have a home group. It's the Get Well group of Heroin Anonymous. We meet Wednesdays and Fridays in Albany. I have a higher power in my life today, and I start off by saying that because those were the suggestions that were given to me when I came in, and I had no clue how to live when I came in and how to stay sober, and so I took all the suggestions that were given to me. So, you know, like so many of us, when I was younger, I was full of insecurity. I was full of fear. I always felt less than, like I never was good enough. I compared myself to other people and always fell short. I never felt like I fit in. And, you know, so when I was a junior in high school, my dad had a heart attack and died, and he was like the disciplinarian in my family, and so until I was 16, I had never had a drink or a drug. And then when he died, you know, of course I had all these feelings and all those fears and insecurities, everything like came to the surface, and I didn't have my dad to kind of shelter me, and so I turned to drugs and alcohol. I wanted to numb the pain. I wanted to stuff all the feelings that I was having, and I just wanted to like feel normal again, you know? And when I took a drink, I felt normal. Like I felt like I fit in. And so I chased that for a really long time. I ended up going to college, and, you know, I really just drank and smoked pot there, but I surrounded myself with people that drank more than me and smoked more pot than me, because, you know, that meant I didn't have a problem. And I fit in with those people, you know. When I graduated from college, I came back to the Albany area, and, you know, I got a good job, and I had a boyfriend, and I had a nice car, and I had a nice apartment, and I had all these things on the outside that looked really good, but I was sick and suffering on the inside. And you know, I would work hard, play hard. I would work all week, and then I would go out to the bar, and I would just get shit-faced, and I would drive home and have to look out the window the next morning and see if my car was there, you know, have just complete blackout. And in 2009, I ended up crashing my car leaving the bar one night, and got an aggravated DWI. I blew a .26, and you know, it didn't even faze me. I got like a slap on the wrist, had my license suspended. But, you know, like I said, it didn't even faze me. I just kept going. And then I got another DWI, and my license was revoked. And, you know, it was like I was invincible. Like none of these things fazed me. And at that time, my boyfriend at the time had hurt his shoulder at work and got prescribed hydros. And, you know, I was always like an uppers person. I had done Coke a couple times. Red Bull and vodka was my drink. So, you know, and that made me like rowdy, bounce off the walls. And so when I saw him eating hydros and like kind of nodding out on the couch, I was like, yeah, you know, that's not my thing. But if you put something in front of me enough, I'm going to end up trying it because I am an addict. And so, you know, I started eating hydrocodone, and the progression is like so many of us, from eating 10 hydros a day, that became not enough. And so I started, eating Oxycontin, and then that wasn't enough. So I started snorting Oxycontin, and then the first time I ever did heroin, it was my birthday, because I would never touch heroin, right? Like, I had the idea that a heroin addict and a junkie were like the homeless guy on the bench, and that was not me. And my birthday one year, I was sick, and my pill guy was out, and he said, I don't have any pills, but I have this bag of heroin. It'll straighten you out, And so that was all he needed to say for me to feel better on my birthday. And I snorted that heroin, and it was like, that was the answer. It was like what alcohol had done for me when I was 16. It just numbed everything. And that was it. I was off to the races. And then snorting it wasn't enough, and so I started shooting it. And when that happened, things fell apart pretty quick. I lost my good job. I didn't have the license or the car anymore. And my boyfriend and I were running partners, and in the end, I hated him. This disease drove a huge wedge in our relationship, and we would lie to each other, we would steal from each other. And so when I was 29, I decided that I was gonna move out, that he was the problem, and I was gonna move in with my mom, and I was gonna get away from him and drugs. And so I moved in with my mother, and it was like, here I was, 29 years old with a raging heroin addiction, no job, no car, no friends, and I thought I was gonna fool my mother. Once I was under her roof, I really couldn't hide how bad things were. And so she gave me a couple ultimatums, and that's kind of when I did a few geographics. I went down to Florida, I went to Boston, but everywhere we go, we take ourselves with us, and so I'd get into shit and just end up coming back to the Albany area. And my one and only attempt at detox was in November of 2011, and I went there for my mom to get her off my back, and I went, and I just, I hadn't suffered enough pain, and so I would sit in that circle, and I would feel bad for the woman across from me, the alcoholic that was, had been drinking for 30 years and, was drinking in her closet. And I was like, wow, I really feel bad for her. She's got a real problem, I could not see myself. And so I ended up leaving, AMA after 6 days, and ended up back at my mother's house. And 3 weeks before Christmas 2011, right around this time actually, I had, at this time I was doing anything that was put in front of me. I was shooting coke, I was smoking crack, I was doing as much heroin as I could get my hands on, and I would go on 4-day benders and just smoke crack. And my mother would blow up my phone, and it was just like, God, she's so annoying. Meanwhile, this poor woman doesn't know if I'm dead on the side of the road. And so she decided enough was enough, and I had come home after, going out for 4 days, and all of my rigs and my spoons and my empty bags and my cottons, all my shit. She had searched my room, and all my stuff was out on the dining room table, and there was a laundry basket full of clothes on the floor. And she said, I don't know where you're going to go, but you cannot stay here. And she kicked me out. And I was like, how dare she? You know, like, I was the victim of this woman. You know, I could not believe that, like, my own mother would kick me out. But again, you know, in doing the step work, I can see now, like, the insanity that I brought into that poor woman's house. And, you know, that I wasn't the victim in that situation. So anyway, she kicked me out, and I ended up, you know, I stayed at a drug dealer's that first night, and for the next 9 months, I stayed pretty much anywhere that people would take me in. I couch surfed. I, you know, did things I needed to do to get a place to stay. I put myself in a lot of really dangerous situations, and I would normally just stay someplace until I would steal from them and get kicked out. And that lasted, you know, like I said, a few months, and then I was staying with this drug dealer, and he finally was like, dude, look, you gotta go. You know, like, he could not fall asleep, and, you know, if his drugs weren't, like, taped to him, they were gone when he woke up. And so, but he ended up paying this, like, boarding house, you know, it was like $100 for the month, and he paid for me to stay at this place for 2 months. That's how bad he just wanted me out of his place. And so it was this, like, house that I was staying with pretty much other, like, drug addicts, and, you know, it was, like, really disgusting. And I was like, I do not fit in here, you know? But meanwhile, like, I fit right in with them. Like, I wasn't showering, I wasn't brushing my teeth, like, I wasn't eating, I wasn't doing anything. Like, every day when I woke up, it was about how I was gonna get my next fix. And so in the summer of 2012, I was staying in that house, and I would wake up every morning, and I would have no money, and I would be dope sick, and I would have no cigarettes, and I couldn't keep a cell phone on. And oh my God, it was like an hour was like eternity, you know, like when you're dope sick. It was the middle of summer, it was like 90 degrees in that room, and so I'd be like crawling out of my skin, and I just need to, like, get out. And so I would go and I would walk to town, and I would, you know, steal from women's purses at Walmart, and I got a bunch of petty larceny charges. I would steal from people's cars, you know, bum cigarettes from people outside Cumberland Farms, and just, like, that would be my day, and just, you know, hope to get like $20 and get a bag and get right for the day. And one day I was walking to town, and there was a house that I always passed, and there was, I remember it so vividly in my head that there was always this van in the driveway, and that day there was no van in the driveway, and I don't know what made me do it, but I had walked past the house, and I turned around and went back, and I was like, let me see if I can get into that house. And their front door was open, and I walked in, and I ended up getting $7,000 in gold from that house, and I was like, ta-da! Like, this is the answer to all of my problems. Like, I don't have to suffer anymore, right? Like, now I just need to rob houses, and I'll have all the money that I need to get high, and, like, this is the life. And, you know, that lasted 2 months, and, you know, every day, every other day, I would go into a house, and I would steal whatever I could find, and I would pawn it, and you know, like I said, it was fun for a little while. You know, my dope guy that I would beg to drive across the river to bring me one bag, now I was putting out all this money. He was taking me to Poughkeepsie with him, you know. It was like, I was like having a blast. And then on September 13th, 2012, I was caught coming out of a house, and I was arrested for burglary, and, you know, it was 3 felonies and 8 misdemeanors, and the gig was up, you know. And after sitting in the sheriff's department for like 11 hours, they booked me into Greene County Jail. And they told me I had one phone call to make. And I did not make a phone call that night. Like, I had burnt every bridge. I had hurt every single person that I loved and that loved me. And I didn't call anyone. You know, I truly, in that moment, felt like I was alone. And I will never forget getting locked into that cell that night, like the sound of that door shutting, because I just felt so alone and defeated and insane and hopeless. And, you know, I had all these feelings, and like for the first time in 15 years, I did not have a drink or a drug to numb it. And that for sure was a spiritual awakening that I did not know in that moment. But, you know, I knew that I never wanted to feel that way again. And, but I had no clue what that meant, you know. I ended up spending the next 8 days on that jail cell floor detoxing. It was awful. Greene County Jail does not give Suboxone. I did it cold turkey, and I'm grateful for that today. I will never forget that detox, and I never want to forget that detox because it keeps it real green for me. And I ended up spending the next 10 months in jail, and I was given the opportunity to, I got felony probation, and I was given the opportunity to go to a halfway house. And, you know, when I walked out of jail, I was so full of gratitude, and I was so I knew that I had been given another chance at life, and because I was facing 3.5 years, and I was so full of gratitude, and I was so willing to do whatever it took to never have to feel that way that I felt that night that I got arrested. And so I went to that halfway house, and I still got in trouble, right? Like we put the drugs and alcohol down, but I still had all my old behaviors. And so I almost got kicked out around Thanksgiving, and I had to call my mom and tell her that I had been put on 6-week house restriction, and I had to call my mom and tell her that my Thanksgiving pass was pulled. I couldn't come home for Christmas, and that was a turning point for me, because here I was, you know, I had done the 10 months in jail and like 4 months at the halfway house, so I was over a year away from a drink or a drug. And I was still calling my mother and disappointing her. And I was like, that's when I realized that this is an inside job, right? Like drugs, I hadn't taken a drink or a drug, and I was still fucking up, you know? And so that's when I realized that I had to do the work. It was an inside job, and that's when things started to change for me. That's when I started to go to meetings for the right reason, to hear the message. That's when I got a sponsor, and I started to work the steps, and, you know, and I started to get honest. And that's when my life started to change. You know, I did that 9 months in the halfway house, and then I went to supportive living, and I was there for 7 months. And, you know, for this addict, like I needed to spend 2 years in jails and institutions to get that solid foundation. And I ended up moving into my own apartment in December of 2014 with another addict in recovery, and that's when HA started in the Capital District. And, you know, HA has been such a HA has just completely changed my life and my recovery. It has given me so many service opportunities, you know, and, you know, I got sober in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, but I truly believe that there is a bond that we share with that addiction to the needle and there's just something with sitting in a room of recovering heroin addicts. So, you know, I worked the steps. The steps completely changed my life. You know, I had played the victim of everyone and everything my entire life, and like the fourth step, doing that fourth column of the fourth step and seeing my part in things completely changed. Like I was to blame in every resentment that I had, and you know, I couldn't play the victim anymore. But it was just so freeing for me, you know, and to sit in my ninth step and make amends to people. You know, there were things that I thought that I would never admit to anyone. And then to admit it to my sponsor and have her say, like, okay, yeah, no big deal. Like, I did that too, or I did this. And then to, like, admit it to other women in the rooms. And then to admit it, you know, to sit face to face with someone and admit it to them and say, you know, this is how I've wronged you, and this is how I want to make it right. You know, this is how I want to change my behavior. This is how I want to change who I am. You know, this is how I want to make an amends to you. That was the turning point for me in my recovery. And, you know, I have a relationship with my higher power today that, you know, I know that I am never alone. I know that everything that happens to me on a daily basis is part of my higher power's plan for me. You know, I take other women through the steps, and, you know, HA has given me the opportunity to speak at different jails and institutions, and that keeps it green for me. And, you know, I'm just so grateful for this program, because I wanted to stop putting a needle in my arm. Like, that was it. I wanted to stop getting the consequences of putting a needle in my arm. But, like, this program has given me so much more than that. You know, I've gotten back, you know, a job. I've gotten back an apartment. I got my license back after being revoked for 6 years. You know, I've gotten these material things back, but, like, the greatest gift that this program has given me is freedom. You know, like, that the noise in my head, the voices in my head that tell me I am not enough, like, those voices are really quiet today, you know? And, like, I have, like, genuine, like, joy in my heart, you know? Like, I am a genuinely happy person today. And, you know, I will continue to do the things that were suggested to me, continue to stay close to this program, and, you know, help other women. You know, this program has given me a purpose in life today to help the next sick and suffering woman that comes into these rooms and never have to feel like the way, that hopelessness that we all feel when we come in. So I'm just grateful to be here, and I'm grateful for you guys. So thanks. I was asked to read a paragraph from the big book, and I am going to read from page 309. It's one of the stories in the back, and this is a story about a teenager that got sober when she was 17, and I was not 17, but I can relate to this paragraph. It says, I came through the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous at age 17, a walking contradiction. On the outside, I was the portrait of a rebellious teenager with miles of attitude to spare. On the inside, I was suicidal, bloodied, and beaten. My stride spoke of a confidence I didn't feel. My dress was that of a street tough kid you didn't want to mess with. Inside, I was trembling with fear that someone would see through my defenses to the real me. If you saw who I really was, you would turn away in disgust or use my many weaknesses to destroy me. One way or the other, I was convinced I'd be hurt. I couldn't allow that to happen, so I kept the real me veiled behind a force field of rough-edged attitude. How I got to this place is still a mystery to me. And that paragraph just speaks to me because I have always had, walls up, and I saw vulnerability as a weakness when I came in here. And today, I see it as a strength. There's no better connection for me than when I can sit with another alcoholic or addict and I can be vulnerable and they can be vulnerable. That's like where the true magic happens. So thanks.
Thanks.